Okay, welcome to the Slow Flowers member meetup for March. Our topic is designing with native plants and growing native plants in your floral enterprise. And I'm really excited about this topic. And we have a PowerPoint, and I'll pop that up, and every one of our presenters will have a chance to tell her story. And then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. And Belinda has just written that she's so excited to talk about natives. We are too. I'm delighted that you're here. Let's see. First of all, I want to introduce our three panelists, longtime Slow Flowers members who've been really active in kind of educating their community and about natives. So I'm going to introduce them in the order that they're going to talk. And so Holly Lukasiewicz of District 2 Floral Studio. Hi, Holly.
Hello.
Some of you may remember that Holly was on a panel last year when we talked about slow pottery. That was amazing. Thank you for your contribution to that, Holly. You really inspired people about how you collaborate with truly local vases in your community. So fun to have you back. And Holly will tell us more about District 2 Floral Studio, but she's in Omaha, Nebraska. And then our second presenter is Deb Majerus of Iron Butterfly Farm and Lodging. And so you'll get to hear about that. Hi, Deb.
Hello.
And both Holly and Deb have contributions in our Slow Flowers forecast for 2024 about native flora. And that's kind of what inspired this. But our third panelist, Kate Waters from Wild Heart in Rimrock, Arizona. Hi, Kate.
Hi, everyone.
Kate has been involved in past Slow Flowers Journal articles as well. And I knew that Kate was working on expanding her native plant business. So I asked her to join us. And so thank you so much for coming in with your story, Kate. So we've got three regions. And we had Alex Pacheri of Sealy Farm in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who was going to join us, but she ended up getting double booked. And so unfortunately, she's not with us. However, I'm going to put the link to her podcast episode that we did last year in the show notes. So I encourage you all to go listen to that conversation. Tonali Gruder has just joined us. She's our membership manager. And Tonali, I just made you co-host so you can jump in and help me. And I'm going to go ahead and put up the PowerPoint now. And I have a few comments, and then I'm going to turn this over to Holly. To start off, we have this beautiful graphic that I wanted to just share. Some of you may have seen it in our March newsletter. It's an illustration by California artist Leslie Gorin, and Leslie is really known for her work illustrating and drawing native flowers, the native flora of California, but also beyond. And we asked her to create this USA inspired native plant illustration. So this is available for you to use now through American Flowers Week or beyond. You can get the link on free downloads for at American Flowers Week, and you can get a badge that fits your social media. So just wanted to start with that because really this forecast piece that we did really inspired me to ask Holly and Deb to come talk more about what they're doing and to include Kate. We had our first insight in the 2024 Slow Flowers forecast was the importance of native flora. And it's really inspired by the work that these women and others are doing to grow more native flowers and perennials and to use them in designs. And that's a challenge. And so you're going to hear a little bit about that today. So I'm going to turn this over to Holly. Holly, I don't know where I got this. This is like the stamp that you use on your bouquet wraps or something.
It is. You're right. It's probably in one of the photos.
Yeah, I just liked it. And, tell everybody about where you're located, and then I'll just click through your slides while you're chatting and tell me to stop if you need me to.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Grateful to be here with you all. I am calling in from Omaha, Nebraska. So I would believe that would be considered the Midwest or the Plains area. And I am a floral designer, and I design within the Slow Flowers value system, so working seasonally and locally. During this time of the year, When I don't have a lot available to me, I'm working with maybe grasses and dried seed pods that were grown locally. And then I'm also sourcing through one of our flower wholesalers local here, and then sourcing from domestic growers. But the reason why I'm here is that during the time that I can source locally, I really do lean into sourcing as much as possible, from probably May through October of just, yeah, really, really leaning into what is seasonally available. And this particular couple that we're looking at on the screen, she is the conservationist related to bees and pollinators. And so she came to me with a very specific list of native flora that she wanted to be represented within the florals for their wedding celebration. And so that was like a really great and beautiful challenge to one, to have that list, but then to be able to make these calls around to various farmers that I know who are integrating native flora into what they're growing. And so you can see here that there's quite a bit of like sunflower varieties, and vervain, oak leaves. So just some like really, really beautiful elements that I'll be honest, I hadn't worked with before, like incorporating oak leaves, which after that wedding, I continued to incorporate oak leaves after the fact, just because I think they're beautiful. They have that beautiful green foliage on one side, and then on the other side, they're that really lovely, soft mint color. And then there's lots of different varieties of oak. I have like a red oak, some red oak leaves here too. So I've even incorporated like dried oak leaves into work that I do during this season. But I will say that one of the, and if we could pause right here, Deborah, one of the challenges that I did come in contact with is that because native flowers aren't necessarily grown to be used as cut flowers, their like vase life qualities behave a little bit different, right? So if you see in the background, there's that orange flower. It's called an oxeye sunflower is how I know it here. Some people might know it by a different name. But I felt like that was not living its best life as a cut flower. And so it was really just like challenging to work with it. And some of the sunflowers, I did notice that they would lose their petals fairly quickly. So I think that is one of the challenges of working with native species that we as designers might not be used to, is kind of knowing either ahead of time, what like a time frame that we might have that they're going to be at their best. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think it's just like a creative challenge that we have. You can move on if you'd like to, Deborah. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like it's what you're saying is just that the more frequently you use native flowers, you become more familiar with how to maybe get them to hydrate and process. And I mean, they're not commercial flowers. That's a really good point.
Right. And I think I did re-listen to your interview with Alex from Sealy Farm yesterday. And one of the things that she had talked about was, yeah, just being able, when she was growing them and having the designers test them, like she was specifically wanting that feedback, like what worked, what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even like looking here at this boutonniere, I mean, it's drooping, like you can see and sometimes vervain is like curly like that, and sometimes it's a little bit more like upright. I can see like a center from a flower where the petals might have fell off, but it's still kind of lovely.
It's lovely. And Holly, every designer has that panic when they look at a boutonniere.
Yeah.
So it's out of water, right?
Yeah. And even just like even doing the hydration chamber on them and really trying to hydrate them as much as possible. And it was a warm day. It was a warm day for the event too. They had
Hmm.
an outdoor wedding. Um, but it was a great experience. Those farmers that I was able to source from were such heroes. A couple of them were harvesting bull thistle. That is so gnarly. I mean, like, and they did it. I was just like so grateful, but I'll probably never ask that. I'll never make that ask again.
So I just love the photography that you shared with us with a photographer who really looked at the details of these beautiful prairie flowers.
And the photographer and the bride are close friends. He had actually created a documentary based on her conservation work that she does with this specific type of bee. And so I think that was he knew that that was going to be a special, important part of their day. And so I'm grateful that he was so attentive to the details of the flowers, because these are what she wanted. Mhm. Which I
um,
think really leans into, she was like a living pollination, that day, like all these beautiful native flowers that they were adorned with. So these are kind of like the common names for those native varieties that she'd asked for, but she'd also given me the Latin nomenclature for those species, just so we were kind of on the same page for what she was looking for.
what are you doing in terms of trying to have these dialogues with growers and you know, I know this is a value that's closely aligned to what you're doing anyway in your business with local sourcing.
Yeah, I would say that um if I do talk with a farmer and they're asking me like what I'm interested in, like what they would like, or what I would like to see, I'm always usually saying um, perennials and if possible natives. And I know that those can take a while to just root themselves and be ready to harvest. I just also think in terms of, and I'm sure Deb and Kate will touch on this too, but wherever we're located around the world, really, climate change is going to impact us all in different ways. And I think as growers, you're going to become very intimately connected with those shifts that we see, whether it's like related to like water access. Like right now in the where I'm located, we're in a drought. We haven't gotten nearly as much snow as we usually do. Um, it's been unseasonably warm here. And so just kind of like really pre-leaning into like what will be available to us and what's going to be like the kindest choice for us that will do like the least amount of harm, like to the
Mm.
earth, to our resources. Um, yeah, so I'm just like really being open, and I'm grateful to have the conversations with growers when they do ask me. And I think it's a real special thing to be able to have that dialogue.
I
So
think
thank
it's
you for hosting this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the other thing, and Debbie Middleman commented on how thoughtfully designed these pieces were. Having the photography of a wedding is half the battle because now future clients and couples will see that and maybe that will spark a conversation about, why would they want native flowers in their wedding? And, it gives you some tools then to share with people. So that's why I was so happy to be able to feature this wedding.
And I am grateful that so many of my brides are there, or couples, they care about these sort of things. So they're either requesting it and they know that they can come to me and I will be open to working that way, or I have so that's just something I'm really grateful for
Yeah.
too, that I get to work with couples who care about that.
Holly, thank you so much. I know that people may have questions about some of the things you mentioned when we go to the group Q&A about maybe hydration, and also I'll hold off on that for now and maybe go on to Deb if that's okay, unless there's
Yeah.
anything else you want to add.
No, that's great. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. I'll leave you all with this dreamy summary photo since we're not there yet.
Right.
Um, when um, when we asked Deb Majerus of Iron Butterfly. Hello, Deb. Welcome for to
Hi.
this conversation. You had written a blog post about native plants and how that was helping you do some reclamation on your property of your vacation rental. And this was one of your quotes, which I absolutely loved. And we asked you if we could republish it in Slow Flowers Journal. I just love this quote. Farmers love the land. I think farmers are going to be some of the real heroes of climate change as we know better and do better. In many ways, we're going back to the way things were done years ago. Love that quote. And that's what showed up in this essay that we published in the forecast. So I asked Deb to kind of dig a little deeper and share the story of what she's doing. So we'll go to her PowerPoint. Deb, I'm going to turn this over to you and ask you to tell people where you're located and what kind of flower operation you have, because it's really a unique, it's a unique hybrid for being a grower.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Deborah, for inviting me. This is really wonderful to be here. And I'm in Minnesota, so land of 10,000 lakes. And part of what spurred that blog post was the University of Minnesota had released information prior to that. We were coming up on National Water Day, and talking about how even in Minnesota, where we're kind of known for having so much water, just thousands of lakes, that we're actually still draining our aquifers at an unsustainable rate. And people don't realize, like, they think we have this abundance of water, but we're drawing water out of the aquifers faster than it can be replenished. And so that's part of what spurned that initial blog post. And so, yeah, so I have a cut flower, a very small cut flower farm. I have about 1 acre in production, 6 acres overall. And as it's sort of evolved, I definitely have prioritized perennials. You have probably 90% perennials, and then of those started to investigate plant a lot of native flowers and try to investigate which ones are good for cut flowers, which Alex, I had heard her speak on your podcast, like a year or so ago, and then followed up with you on trying to get the names of the species that she had florists and designers, investigate for her and see, because trying to find, one, it takes a long time to get the natives established. And so if we can have a list or a resource where we know, okay, these are going to be good cut flowers, then that will help more growers, prioritize those in their plantings and not just sort of be guessing at what might be a good cut flower. So, trying to source, different things online and different growers to get that information and then get them in the hands of designers to get their feedback. And some do have a good vase life, many of them don't, but some do. And so trying to, that's part of the work that Alex did. And yeah, and then the ones with a shorter vase life, great for designing maybe, or possibly could be good for designing just short-term, pieces. But anyway, so I dove into permaculture, which some of you might be familiar with, but it's that concept of gardening or growing as an ecosystem. So, trying to use nature's design to inform our design. And part of that is in getting to slow down the water as it's on your landscape so that it soaks in and recharges that groundwater superficially for the roots of your plants, and then also more deeply in the aquifers. And we're located on a so in the part of Minnesota where we are, it's called the driftless region. So we're in the part where the glaciers didn't come through and just flatten everything into plains. We're kind of near the Mississippi. And so there's this whole area along that Mississippi River Valley that's known as the driftless region. And so we have these beautiful rolling hills, and so our property is hilly, not just flat farmland. And so So we have, so yeah, so in this picture on the left, you can see like kind of on a slope how you incorporate these swales and berms on contour on your property so that as the water comes through, it's going to fill up that swale and soak in, and then the plants downstream of that swale, like the trees and shrubs and flowers, benefit from that water soaking in superficially. And then as that swale would overflow, it'll go down to the next, swale and berm. And so you can do it on large or small scales. And part of what inspired that quote, Deborah, was that, we're in a land of huge farms. I grew up on a more traditional farm. Well, when I say traditional too, that's there's the traditional, family farm that my grandparents had that, was like that 100-acre plot where they had lots of different animals, they had lots of different crops. It was very diversified. And then, as I grew up in this, we had this shift in our country to these monocrop farms, these huge farms that are just soaked in chemicals. And, and now I feel like we're seeing that that's not working and that there's a shift back, and it's slow, it's moving, steering a big ship, right? But like the big farmers in Minnesota, more and more are starting to be open to these concepts and are starting to, there's really large farms that are starting to recontour their land and put in strips of native plants to bring in the beneficial insects and, shrub, hedgerows and all those kind of things. So anyway, this image is just to show people that you can put this concept in place on large or small scale, and even on flatter ground, like you'll see with our rental property, you can still include, this concept. So this is just kind of showing how, like, if you're on a hilly slope, you would want to follow the lines of contour of the slope, and that's how you put the swales in along those lines of contour so that it does stop the water and fill up before it moves on to the next one. Because if they're not on contour, the water's just going to run downhill. So that was the main part of that. So if you can probably go to the next, yeah. So then this is our farm in the middle, and I superimposed like the Google image of our farm with this image of the contour lines, which you can get like all this stuff online. And so then, we could see this, the part in the kind of lower right is that was before we had planted anything there. It's pretty bare. It was an old horse pasture. So that's now our main growing area in that sunny part. And so the photos on the left and right are from a few years ago as we were starting to put in the swales along those lines of contour, and, some big, some small, and just kind of demonstrating how that looks on our farm. So we're not, I'm always a little bit jealous when people are on really flat ground. They have these beautiful straight rows of flowers, and it looks very easy to maneuver. But so on a hilly slope, it's a little, the lines of contour are curved, which is really beautiful, but it's just a little bit more tricky to work with sometimes. But
it's more naturalistic than just a crop
yeah.
grid.
Yep, on the right is exactly, that's on the hillside, kind of looking back towards like the barn and the house. But those are smaller, they're on a slope, but the little pathways would be kind of the swale area. And actually our goal is we do have plastic in some of the pathways over top of like the wood chips or whatever's in there. And then I'd like to eventually replace that with living plants, like a living pathway. But we had a lot of crabgrass and all kinds of stuff that we're trying to make sure it's smothered and gone before we take all that landscape fabric.
Bless your heart. I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is our little, it's just a little rental house that's just down the street. We're, even though we have 6 acres, we're kind of right sort of on the edge of town, in town, like surrounded by town. So this is just down the block from us. And so on the left is the yard initially when we first acquired the property. And so then you can see in the second picture, so this in the second picture, kind of on the upper left, you can see that's actually a rain garden that we had dug in. We kind of did it in phases, like as time allowed, but we really dug down deep and made this big kind of, pond almost area where it would capture a lot of rain and runoff. And then later we came back and put in these little like swales, if you will, but instead of being on contour because it's so flat, we just kind of parceled them out. Well, we had to be mindful there was a gas line, so that informed our design too. So, but we just wanted to be able to get the water. Point is to move the water out on the land to get it to the plants as needed. And so we did that, and then we have this some contour on that, and then filled it with those swales were filled with wood chips, so they became like walking paths essentially to get access to weed and get in there. And then we covered and like smothered the grass and put in native plants. So it would have been 2 falls ago. And then it was very interesting, like proof of concept, because this last year, so we'd put it in what, 2022, or the fall of 2022, and then 2023, we had a really wet spring, and then we had a really dry, we were in a drought all summer long. And this property, we never watered the plants. And that's part of the like benefit, right, of replacing turf grass with natives, especially, is that they're just very drought resistant. But it does take time for them to establish. But these guys, they just they just did great. Like I think planting them in the fall, they put their roots down in the winter, and then they got enough rain in the spring that I never had to water them, and they just thrived. And we have plants that bloom all season long, so things that are blooming in spring and things that are blooming late in the fall. Yeah, and this diagram from the Minnesota I forget which department put this out, but this also came out around the same time as that University of Minnesota article. And on the very far left, you can see that tiny little line, that's turf grass, and the roots are like 2 inches deep. Like you just think of sod, right? Like those are the roots of the grass. So they don't go down into the ground at all. And then you have all these native plants showing like they go down up to 15 feet sometimes into the soil.
Such a great graphic. Wow.
Yeah, and so that those roots help break up the compaction of the soil, which is another problem of like the rain just runs off the grass. Like it's just hard and compacted, and the roots will help bust up that compaction. And then they act like sponges, to soak that water up, make a pathway for the water and soak it up. And even people, there's like turf alternatives, like on the far right, that's buffalo grass, which could be a turf grass alternative and still be short and not, if you don't want your yard to look like a prairie, there's still better alternatives than turf grass,
Wow. And then on the bottom is the list of all the actual cultivars. So we're going to share the replay video of this, and people can grab that list.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
It's amazing. Oh, great resource.
Thanks. And then I just got involved with this group just very recently since I wrote the blog article, but they're an organization in Minnesota, and they're all about planting for clean water, which is what inspired that initial post. So they were excited. They have a lot of like landscapers and nurseries and things, but they didn't have anyone doing cut flowers, or like that wasn't on their radar. And so I just recently kind of partnered up with them, they're all trying to find ways to connect people with native plants, which is also like that the house that you just saw is on a pretty busy street and a busy sidewalk. And so we have signage up explaining this is a native planting and it's great for the pollinators and all these things. So wanting to inspire, the public as well as, designers. And so, yeah, this is butterfly weed, which has a great vase life, actually. I used this a lot last year, and there's not a lot of, it has that nice pop of orange and that interesting shape. And we actually had so many monarch caterpillars. Like I'd be sitting in my house looking at and then all of a sudden I'd see this monarch caterpillar munching on it. So this is the video, right?
Yeah, the photo on the left is
okay.
Yeah, tell us what's in the photo on the left, and then I'll play your video.
Yeah. So yeah, on the left is Liatris, which probably a lot of you are familiar with, which is that is a great cut flower too. It has a long vase life. And then Joe Pye weed, which I think was on Alex's list as well as having a good vase life. And then the native bee balm, or Monarda, which the color, there's so many other like hybrids of natives that are available, which I think are also great in a lot of ways, but it's nice to also include the natives because some of the, species are just so finely adapted to that specific plant that even if that one maybe I haven't used it as much as a cut flower, but I have some of these incorporated just to bring in the beneficial insects, have
so
all the other
pretty.
benefits of
Well, let me
natives.
play this little video you filmed, and
Yeah.
I'll try to turn up the volume if
I was
it's
going to
hard
say
to
I
hear.
can either narrate over it or
Yeah, why don't we see?
Okay. Yeah, I don't hear it. So I'm just demonstrating like that the water's going into that the rain garden. Like it's capturing all that water used to just run right into the street and down into the gutter system, and then just kind of pointing out the little pathways that the water you can kind of see how you don't see, I mean, you just see how it's kind of sloped and you have these little walking paths, but you don't realize the water's moving through that whole area. And I'm saying what I already said, that we didn't water it at all during the drought. And you can see like this is kind of like late summer, everything's doing really well. And so and it's going to fill in like a lot of these natives, like this is year one essentially. So, by year three, it's going to look so much fuller and bigger and more beautiful. And I'll keep tweaking, tweaking it. But
And by the way, if we come to Rochester, Minnesota, we need a place to stay. This is you rent this out as an Airbnb, right?
we do, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And we're home of the Mayo Clinic, which I mean, that's not a fun reason to have maybe come visit unless you're just coming for they do executive physicals. So if, all of you business owners, you can come get an executive physical at Mayo and stay at our place. We're just like 5 minutes from downtown.
Okay, good. Awesome. Thank you so much, Deb. I'm going to move on to Kate. Kate Waters from Wild Heart Farm in Rimrock, Arizona. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us and thanks for hosting this conversation. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about I'm kind of a blend of these two things because I have a farm in Rimrock and I grow for myself as a floral designer. And we do weddings and events, and we have a CSA, as well as growing for florists. And then we also have I'm also a farmer. So we have a small acreage, it's 1.2 acres, and we're in a part of Arizona, which is kind of the middle zone, around 3,600 square feet, but we're in a riparian woodland in a floodplain of Beaver Creek. So yeah, for me, I come with the hat of being a farmer and a florist, and then I love foraging. And I also come from a botany background, where I studied plants, and I was a botanist for about 15 years before I finally turned to growing plants. So I really have a heart for natives. So, just I thought I'd do a little education about, I mean, you're all probably here because you want to do this, but again, native plants are just, drought resistant. This is a native Monarda as well that I cultivated from a cutting in a local canyon nearby. And then they create habitat and very quickly, especially for native species. So it's just really important for us to have distinguish between what a cultivar is of a native and a true native. So a cultivar is derived from a native plant, but it's been selected for certain qualities. And so it doesn't have as robust genetics as a native plant would. So it wasn't that the conditions that it grew in, like a native would, that determines its genetics. And then that makes for more local adaptations, which is what we want. It's going to attract the local pollinators. It's going to be more adapted to your region, the weather, and that type of thing. So this is the milkweed again. We grow the milkweed and the artemisia. One of my favorite artemisias is that blue in the back that I love using as a foliage.
What's in the center photo, Kate?
Oh, this is blue grama grass, which is a very widely distributed native grass. But I always loved this grass. It's like a little eyebrow shape. And last year I started using it. and in my designs, and then also giving it to the florists, and they were everyone loved it. So
Wow, that's
yeah.
cool. Love that.
So, designing with natives, I think it just makes people happy. These are my floral designers on my team, Terry and Danny. And they're just going home with some bouquets, and there's a lot of like native in there. It's the unique look that natives give us that are you can use the flowers, but you can use the branches, the pods, the seeds, the dried, and I think they add sparkle to things because and then they also give us a sense of place that, we can, especially for me, because I'm near Sedona, people come here to elope and get married in Arizona because they love Arizona. So I want them to have that in their bouquet. And then I think most importantly, floristry is a very degenerative industry. And so the more we can regenerate it with using native flora, because it will reduce the impacts both on the people and the planet, because it's quite relentless what we ask of the land and the people
Mm,
in our
I
industry.
love that.
So
Love that.
yeah.
Let's be regenerative, not degenerative. Thanks for
Yeah.
mentioning that.
Yeah, and so I think one of the things that has been really fun for me is becoming last year was the first year I really had enough to sell because we're in our fifth season this year. So I'm, slowly building up what I'm growing and had enough to give, to sell to florists. So these are some of my local florists that buy buckets from me. And this is an example of a bucket that they were looking they had a wildflower wedding that somebody wanted. So this one has globe mallow in it, and which is some native Philadelphus, mock orange. This Phacelia is a relative of a native, and they were just so happy with it. And then this is a design. I do a lot of arches and use some of the native greenery. It has goldenrod in it. So the florists have been very receptive. You can
I
go
love
next
that.
slide.
And just to comment on that, Kate, your florist, it sounds like they're just happy to take a bucket of whatever affects, wildflower looking cuttings you can give them. There's nobody ordering specific varieties from you.
No, I actually I've made it really easy for myself where I just offer a bucket a week,
Mhm.
and then I curate it. And I think I have 4 florists that I do that for. So that's the scale I can work at, and that's the level of complexity I can do with orders because I do my own events. So I just have built up some trust with these people and they appreciate what I give them and
Mm.
it works out. So it's really nice. So I just, want to comment again that you can use the native plants just like we would in our regular things to be able to have seed heads like this is Apache plume, which I use in crowns. I use, for little, kids, when we make their little boutonnieres. Is a great feathery rose family shrub that's very drought adapted. This is creosote bush, which grows and it has like in these huge flats, and it's got a beautiful scent to it. It's very hardy. And then the pods, of milkweed. So this is something that's regenerative in floristry is when you can actually let the flowers bloom. Like in both of these, you let the flowers bloom, let the pollinators have the pollen, and then you use what is left. So,
Wow.
which is the seeds.
Wonderful.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So I'm really big on floral education. I think it's just because of my botany background. And I really like with my CSA, everybody always gets species lists and a little bit more of an ecological background of what things come from. And native grasses are, I think, an unexplored frontier. So many of our grasses that we use in floral design are invasive and they're requested by name, like pampas grass. Pampas grass is invasive in our riparian creek. And so I just don't use it anymore. And I'm always looking for alternatives. So here is Terry picking this Sacaton grass. And I took to the Wallapai tribe when I did a presentation and we did some floristry with natives, and that was just people love that grass. And then this is needle and thread grass in the curly version up in the photo, and then in a design I picked it earlier and it's straight stems and then it starts to curl as so you get to have that element of surprise for your customers where they see the things change.
Love that.
So we can
Gorgeous.
go to the next slide. So yeah, I see a growing public demand with the florists that I work with. They're looking, and then the customers that I have, like Holly, I'm so lucky to attract the nature lovers just by not using, anything besides local flowers. That is who my customers are. And so here's a couple of the events, and I had a wildflower type bouquet here that has a lot of this has native clematis in it. At the top, I did for a vineyard. We did a fundraiser with we use a lot of native elements just with dahlias. And I think that's also fun is when you're using something crazy and showy like a dahlia, but then you have like tumbleweed and, these native grasses and manzanita and things like that. And then like I have customers like the museums, local museums, and they want their customers are, going to be resonating with this.
Love that.
Yeah, we can go next. So I think, just speaking to our slow flowers, community, many of us are part of flower collectives. And I think this is a way that we can really start influencing by growing and selling. And, we're poised to distribute these stems to the public. So our Arizona Flower Collective, this is us Debbie, I saw you're here. This is us in last July. This is all July, the hottest month on record in Arizona. This is what we were all growing, and the florists just really were resonating with it. So I think we have a lot of influence.
I love that. Yeah, the flowers tell the story for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we have the potent possibilities. For me, I'm really getting into flower storytelling, and this is an event that I did. It was a grant-funded event where we collaborated to tell the story of forest fire through pole dancing, poetry, and with a flower installation. And it, we used a lot of native plants for that, and it was very curious for the audience, to get involved. We invited them to look at everything. And then I'll just, just close by saying that we are applying for the grant, same grant funding, the Western SARE Sustainable Agriculture Research Grant, to do a 3-year trial of flowers and foliage, native flowers and foliage. And one of the things I think is really important about the proposal is that I'm going to be speaking from a farmer who's growing natives, as well as helping florists design with them. So I'm really excited about helping people see the potential of growing natives on their farms in areas that they wouldn't, like Deb was saying, using the permaculture principles to, add these edges to our land that are really productive for native species.
Wow, that is amazing. I think all of you have something so important to prompt more dialogue. And what a great combination to have a florist, a grower, and a farmer florist. I didn't even realize how genius that was. Did you have a question, Lisa?
I didn't have a specific question. I'm super excited to hear everybody. I actually have a local flower farmer friend here. I'm a farmer florist that I bought a few California natives from last year. And now I've got a bunch, some that she had growing, and I've been using some for foliage. And it is, so great in so many ways, especially with the water shortages. So
right.
Just saying hi.
Thanks for saying hi. Kathleen Barber, who's in Oregon, said she loves this topic. She's done a couple weddings where the bride just wanted Pacific Northwest greens. Kathleen, do you want to add anything?
No, it was just Northwest greens.
Oh, okay.
Which is always fun, Sal Al, Doug for huckleberry, everything. Usually, I'm interested in this because we have so much green here,
Yeah.
and trying to find those splash of colors that that's native, that you can add in to the garden.
I think when Holly talked about the red oak, that came to mind as, a way to integrate color with colorful, especially if it's not a season when anything's in bloom, right? You have to kind of get it with branches
Yeah, I
and
don't have
foliage.
oak here. That's in the valley. I have to forage down there for that.
Well, thanks so much, Kathleen. April Vomfell, she said this topic is the best combination of art and science. Thank you, April. Do you want to jump on and talk a little bit about these best practices for pollinators? Maybe that's a resource other people don't know about.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when the second presenter from Minnesota was talking about her permaculture and the land and the, agriculture in the area. The best practices for pollinators. It's an online video series. It actually just happened a couple weeks ago, but then they put all the videos on YouTube. And it's a ton about science, agriculture, land conservation, native plants, how to make a native meadow. There's just so many cool ideas in there. Not really related to cut flowers at all, but a lot of it I think is transferable and useful.
Great. Yeah, we'll add that link in our show notes when we post this. That's great. Thank you, April. And let's see. Belinda said she's in the process of restoring a large portion of her 5 acres to native prairie plantings. Belinda, where are you located?
I am located in central Oklahoma. I'm in a suburb of Oklahoma City. So I'm actually in the process of trying to get on with our conservation district to do restorative stuff. So I'm pretty
Great. Report back. You're not exactly next to Nebraska, but kind of closer in the region to Holly than anybody else. So
yeah, I went on later and asked if anyone had recommendations on where they like to source natives from. So
oh, okay. Let's hear from our experts here. Deb, you have some thoughts?
I use Prairie Moon Nursery, who they're actually happen to be very close to me in a nearby town, but they ship locally and they have natives, or they ship nationally rather. So they have natives to a lot of different places, and there's a lot of other resources out there, but I just love them. So especially if you're in the Midwest, but also further out, you should check them out, Prairie Moon Nursery. And I would caution, or I think planting natives from wherever you get them is great, but if you can source them when they're free of neonicotinoids and other, where they haven't been grown with chemicals already, because that can have lingering effects, I think. And so, Prairie Moon doesn't do that. Also, we just have in our area, I think a lot of cities would have this where we have gardeners clubs and different things that have, or we have a local park that's near us that does restoration projects, and they have their own little plant sales in the spring, and they usually are all chemical free, neonicotinoid free, and so just looking for that especially I think would be a tip. So
thanks for mentioning that. I was just going to say, in Washington State where I live, the Washington Native Plant Society has a big spring sale as well, and the growers who come to that don't normally sell to the public. So Oklahoma probably has a Native Plant Society. Every state probably has one, and it's another resource. Most of these groups don't have cut flower growers or designers on their radar, kind of like what you were referring to, Deb, with the green or the blue thumb project. But if we speak up, they're going to start paying attention.
Yep.
Holly or Kate, do you have nurseries that you want to suggest?
I would also just say that, your local arboretums and botanical gardens are good. But I would also just look, through your master gardeners, through these local small networks. I can speak to here in Arizona. It's all local and super small, and people who are backyard growers. That is where you're going to get. And the Google monarch habitat in your area, and there are a lot of these milkweed for monarch type programs that are very regional. So we have, people that are just growing monarchs from Arizona. So
wow, that's great. Holly, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say you could check with your state extension office too. That could be a place to start. And then, I know here around Omaha, Nebraska, there's certain small farms that will sell native seedlings also. One of them, and I did put a couple of them in the chat, but
Oh,
one of them in
thanks.
particular, she has some remnant prairie, like from the Les Hills, which is not in very many parts of the world, but it's like remnant prairie that she is actually gathering seeds from. So that's like another thing that I'm
Oh,
I'm
I
kind of
see.
curious about and learning about is like how some natives can become cultivars and like cultivated to be to not grow as tall, right? Like goldenrod or solidago, like
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different cultivars of it that yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I see that you added those, the Mulline Hill Farm, out of Council Bluffs, Iowa. And then Xenia, said that in the Northeast, she sources from North Creek Nursery. So I'll try to glean all these comments too and share them when I post this so everybody can come back and please email me if you have things you want to add. I know that there's so much more to talk about, and this is really just scratching the surface. And I love that we've started this dialogue, and I think we can be a resource for others to consider what they're growing. The one thing that Alex Kacheri said to me when I had her on the podcast last year, and I'll try to wrap up with this, and I thought it was really an interesting philosophy, is that when she's harvesting her native perennials, she leaves about a third of the flowers or the third of whatever's growing, leaves it for the pollinators. So it's like take some, leave some, and that kind of regenerative mindset is ultimately going to build up her perennial base for her farm, but also the perennials will multiply and she'll get more to sell. So I think it's better for the planet, better for the pollinators, and hopefully better for the floral industry. And everyone's nodding, so that's good. Listen, I want to just say that we're going to do a drawing for our giveaway of our poster. So we'll announce that hopefully next week. Last month, which really was only 2 weeks ago, we had Lenny Larkin talking about profitability on flower farms, and we did give away a copy of her book, courtesy of her publisher. So I just wanted to announce that Monique Morrison of Epiphany 8 Flower Farm received that. So congratulations, Monique. And next month, we are going to be back on our regular schedule like this with the second Friday of the month. We'll announce that topic in the April newsletter. That'll be Friday, April 12th. So Holly, Deb, and Kate, you guys were so inspiring. Thank you so much for this great topic. And I can't wait to keep the conversation going and hear more about what everybody's doing. So have a great weekend and we'll talk soon. Thanks.